Tick tock, tick tock. The clock is ticking. Are they actually going to do it? And there's already movement in the portal, so somebody's moving. Will it be Chip Kelly?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, review. If you're an everydayer, you've been suffering through that last week of Feast Week through UCLA close basketball losses and the most disastrous, crushing, maybe loss of the season, you could argue, for UCLA football. They get dropped by Cal 33-7, which leads us to have lots of questions. Lots and lots of questions for Chip Kelly, portal movement already, and of course, we'll grade a lot of the terrible performance for that Cal game in this podcast here today. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right. Well, is there any way to get a discount on what the Bruins paid for on Chip Kelly way back when in 2018? At the recording of this episode, Chip Kelly has not been fired. I'm not sure if and when that would happen. And then, most importantly, two Bruins have already checked into the transfer portal. So that is some significant news for UCLA that immediately after the season, two names you would absolutely recognize, underutilized, I would think, that they have not made it to the portal. I've seen it retweeted between different UCLA beat reporters, and the transfer portal tracker is already going crazy. So let's get started, why don't we? The Chip Kelly question. It was already interesting after the Arizona State game. Everybody, if not the entirety of the fan base, seemed, hey, they're done with Chip. Now, the likelihood that the Bruins would have fired their coach before the USC game was a little slim to none, but it did happen. Everybody was calling for his head, including myself. And I was certainly, I'm an optimistic person by nature. I want to give someone as many chances as possible. I want to give someone a chance to right their wrongs. I just want that to happen. It just continues to get worse with many opportunities. Now, if you want to go from an overall perspective, many national people, even people in this own network here at Locked On, will say, well, look, I guess I got the record right. I expected UCLA to be this. And maybe we should have expected UCLA to be this record, right? A 7-5 in the regular season, but a win over SC in dominant fashion. But the way it looked, there's the eye test. It's one thing to run numbers and say, all right, was UCLA going to hit this in total? Dealing with different quarterback room questions and what's it going to look like. But the way it looked like on the field, the dramatic, vast improvement from the defense and the inability certain times just for UCLA to win games that were very winnable on the road. And at the end, choking 2 games at home in which they were favored by more than 2 scores or 3 scores in some cases, which in year 1 or 2, in what expects to be a jump year, okay. Now, with the peripherals, all right, you had a quarterback change, offensive line had a big downtick after some pretty good offensive lines the previous couple of 2 years. You lose an NFL back, you lose now an NFL quarterback, an NFL receiver, top receiver, that is. And it can make sense your offense is going to slow up a little bit. But just the sloppiness, the mistakes continuing to pile up at the end of the season is where things just kind of rub me wrong. After their latest debacle at the Rose Bowl, where, all right, you could point to they had been undefeated at the Rose Bowl. No, they couldn't even hold that fact this year. And now we wonder what the Bruins will look like heading into Big Ten. Is it a new coach? Is that exactly what the Bruins wanted when they extended Chip Kelly heading into the last year of Pac-12 play and the Bruins to be under 500 in the legendary Conference of Champions? No, you don't want the level of mediocrity. The 500 record, people will tout to the last 3 seasons of Chip Kelly being 24-13, right? Easy schedules in some sorts, tougher schedules in other years. A win against LSU, 2 wins against SC, both on the road. Here we are, still frustrated with how this team goes and looks like. I'm just at a loss for words with how that performance looked like Saturday. I'll grade that a little later. It's just frustrating. I know we can, as I said before, I mentioned the reaction. The Bruins were undefeated in games where Garbers played the whole game and did not leave early due to injury. Isn't that funny? As someone, as a self-proclaimed Dante, get him as many reps as possible advocate, that certainly hurt UCLA's winning percentage this year. Can you pin it all on a quarterback? Offensive line issues and young quarterback mistakes that cost UCLA games early on, the middle portion of the season in October into November in key moments, right? When UCLA had to play with 3 separate starting quarterbacks. Yeah, but Chip Kelly's supposed to be that offensive mind. To get through those little shortcomings, to win the games, you're supposed to win by 2 to 3 scores. All right, Cal was going to be scrappy. Arizona State came and made some goofy game plan that made the Bruins look silly at the Rose Bowl. And here you are wondering, they could have won the Utah game. Should have won the Arizona State and Cal games. Maybe with the better game plan could have competed even better with Arizona, and certainly didn't give themselves a fighting chance against Oregon State after just coughing up the football. Where do you lie? Well, the portal has already opened for some. A grad transfer, Cam Brown, heading to the portal. I thought he might have a big season. I thought that might be the case. I know when you bring in guys like a Kyle Ford, J. Michael Sturdivant, he is someone who probably got lost in the fold of things in a deep receiver room that largely played to Logan Loya at the end of the season, getting a bulk of the reception, bulk of the yards. I could wonder how many of these players are frustrated in the receiver room with how the quarterback situation played out, with how the offensive game plan worked within games. Yes, they're going to run the football, yet, Cam Brown, I liked what he provided in his few years at UCLA. He already transferred to the Bruins. So this will be his second transfer. He's grad transferring out. He was the first one that was named. All right. You could see that one being all right. The next one, Keegan Jones. Speaking of guys who weren't utilized as much or could have been used even more, Keegan Jones, my goodness. He could have been used as a kick returner in multiple facets, with the biggest dud of the weekend being the fumble on the kickoff by Colson Yankoff, when most people, who cares about it, was clear that the Bruins probably needed a better kick returner after years of Kaz Allen dazzling us with some fun returns, and we just didn't get that with Keegan Jones. And think about Kaz Allen. Came in, that speed back, we thought it would be like Oregon, underused. Keegan Jones, some amazing moves, some crazy touchdown runs to win the Washington State game. Other awesome runs where he would spin and do things. I'm not sure what made him lose favor in the coaching staff or whatever it was, or made him lose plays, or it's just he wasn't game plan. He wasn't used. I'm not sure if that was a Deshaun Foster thing, if that's a Chip Kelly thing, whatever. Jones is in the portal. So that's already 2 guys. Monday morning, when you see fired coach, you're like, oh, nope. It was just an NFL coach that was fired for the Panthers. It wasn't Chip Kelly. And at the recording of this podcast, he has not been. And while there's some sources, rumors, yes, no, maybe so, the Cal game brings up the heat again. All that warm, fuzzy feelings, all the warm and fuzzies are gone from the SC game. Now, if an SC fan wants to come bark, you spitball back and say, no, go hide in the corner for another 365, 66 days, right? It's a little shorter than that now, but you get my point. UCLA's got to make a move and make it quick. It's got to be a firm stance, extremely public after the Cal game, right? It was already like the top donor in Wasserman, and then you got Martin Jarmond with comments supporting Kelly after the SC win leading into the Cal week. Now I wonder, what is this going to look like? Does UCLA have the money? Are they a mediocre program? No, they're more of a traditional name. We've talked about different reports of how UCLA gets watched and is consumed. Now, is it the craziest, most rocking environment in the Rose Bowl every week? No, but it certainly has a level that is closer to the top than it should be near the bottom. Not the craziest of atmospheres, but the game day experience should certainly be amongst the better times for college football. And it just isn't. People point to Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly this. Attendance gone down. Donors going down. Players starting to leave. Losses piling up in games that should be winnable. I know the young quarterback mistakes were there. And he did the same mindset as me. Suffer this year and play with the quarterback. But at some point, when did you sacrifice too much of this season when the Bruins could have competed a little more? The clock's ticking, and nothing has happened yet. Jonathan Smith's already been hired by Michigan State. I'm not sure the Bruins are ever going to go for Jonathan Smith. The biggest connection is, of course, the Jed Fish connection. You could go in-house, which would be interesting, of a somewhat sinking ship with D'Anton Lynn. More on D'Anton Lynn later, not of head coaching vacancies, but hey, he was definitely snubbed of a significant award. And hey, or at least being a finalist. And then, hey, there's more names out there. Whether you want to go find somebody in the studio, I'm not sure the Bruins want to do that after Chip Kelly came from a studio, or if you're just going to go in-house, recent coaching connection, I'm just not sure where the Bruins go from here. It's just either got to come out publicly and make it happen, or fire him. And I've already vocally said my stance. It's got to change. Something's got to change immediately. You're running out of time. The portal technically starts the window December 4th. A couple of guys are doing grad transfer moves, and that doesn't really affect things in terms of eligibility. Anybody can put their name in the portal at any time. The fact that as soon as the earliest convenience, the earliest business day happened, Brown and Jones are doing that, hey, people were always going to leave, but those aren't like third, fourth stringers. Those are guys who could be good at other places that could have been even better at UCLA. We'll talk about more next about UCLA and Cal when it comes to, hey, grading that performance that was pretty atrocious to end the regular season in 2023. Well, the next big event's no longer a football game other than the bowl game. So you're going to be wanting to get those big-time, prime-time tickets with the likes of Game Time going to UCLA men's basketball games. Hey, what are you going to do when the SC Trojans come to town, when the Wildcats come to town in late March again and those ticket prices are hiking? You go to Game Time because they've got last-minute tickets with flash deals up to the last minute, even an hour after the game has started, depending on the sporting event. And they've got other events like comedy events, music, sports, theater events, all in prices, killer last-minute deals. All you got to do is check out Game Time because they give you easy ways. They are obsessed with finding ways to save you money. Zone deals, you can pick the section, and Game Time picks the seats, average of 18% of savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, get the app, create an account, get the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Cruising on, second segment of the Locked On UCLA podcast. Man, the portal's moving. Everything is happening. Chip Kelly, hey, if he stays or goes, is he going to be able to work his magic in the transfer portal this year? The Bruins are already -2 when it comes to guys leaving the program, 2 grad transfers in Jones and Brown leaving the program, where I hope they do well elsewhere if they decide to whatever they're going to do with their football career. I think they can have great seasons in their next year of college football. And the expanded playoff, crazy years with conference realignment, NIL going to go crazy. We know, and I expect those guys to probably have good seasons elsewhere. I just don't know what level that will be at. All right, let's start offensively because the Bruins absolutely stunk up the joint. They stunk it up in the Rose Bowl. It started off well. The ball was moving with Ethan Garber, 7 of 9, 43 yards, a QBR of 89 and 9 pass attempts. Incomplete. They thought it was a fumble. Review it, change it, but he was hurt. Knocked him out. Couldn't go for the rest of the game. Bring in Dante Moore. And a little frustrating that on a third down leads to an interception. All right. Mistake. You try to do things early. All right. Later in the game, end of the first half, you get the ball deep in your own territory. You're within a score after you give up the kickoff return for a touchdown when the Bruins took the lead, and you're still down, 13-7 at that time. Bruins could have taken a knee, sent it at halftime, and not dealt with any issues. Well, a sack, a fumble, Cal gets the ball, scores, and then the momentum's gone because you're down 2 scores. The offense hadn't proven itself to be a team capable of putting in points to come back from 2 scores down consistently because they didn't do that all year. They didn't do that at all all year. This was not a comeback team that made big scoring surges that thrilled us to late last second end of game victories that kept our hearts beating really quickly, kept had us breathless. That was not this team. That was not this year's UCLA team. It was a lot of hit or miss, and we knew pretty much very early in the game what type of game it was going to be based on not just effort, but just execution. And in this game, the execution just wasn't there. The Bruins only ran for 71 yards. And you can add in Dante Moore's negative 34. You take that away, that's only 100 yards. That's well short of what this team averages to win, to go against the Cal team that came in 5-6, playing for a bowl record. They were 3-6, won their last 3 in a row, and get the last laugh, and we'll be like, oh yeah, Cal tax, whatever. The Bruins ended up paying the most ridiculous calimony, if you will, the Cal tax, and getting embarrassed at home against the Golden Bears. Dante Moore responsible for 3 turnovers, 266 yards passing, and a touchdown of the 4 UCLA turnovers, 3 of them coming offensively. You're not going to win games. In the Chip Kelly era, the Bruins proved it multiple times, although it doesn't matter who the head coach is. Doesn't matter who the head coach is. I'm going to say this now. You're turning it over -2 to the opposition multiple times. You're probably not going to win the game. Doesn't matter who's head coach. Now, doesn't matter if who you can get ready to play quarterback to change the momentum. I know the idea of, get Chase Griffin in there. Colin Schlee's been too banged up, right? Because that would have been the next available option if that would have worked. Griffin, UCLA could have done things to change things up, and it ended up going with Dante Moore, getting him as many reps as possible, and the Bruins couldn't run the football as successfully as they would have liked. Harden, 47 yards on 10 carries. Steele, 12 carries, 53 yards. Things just were not going the Bruins' way. Now, a decent receiving day from Logan Loya, 88 yards, a touchdown, 9 grabs. Kyle Ford, 4 catches, 51 yards. Had more of a quiet season than I probably would have liked, especially with J. Michael Sturdivant ending up having a very quiet year. 3 receptions, 17 yards. Made big plays. I'm just not sure the Bruins were able to go as vertical as they would have liked this year due to lack of pass protection, the ability to hold on to the football, and the ability to spot the open receivers either underneath or hit the guys going deep that are wide open. That just wasn't the case this year for the UCLA quarterbacks. Didn't matter who it was. Largely, a good chunk of the games went to Dante Moore. A good number of those throws missed by Dante Moore, but there's missed throws by Garbers and Schlee and different opportunities there. In this game offensively, the Bruins just were dead. You score 7 points at home against Arizona State and Cal. In each of those games at home to end the year, that's just embarrassing. That is flat out embarrassing. You've got to find better ways to score more than 7 points. And I know they missed field goals and different things. It's just embarrassing for this team to go out and lay an egg offensively like that. With Chip Kelly knowing the heat is rising. It's his own birthday, and the biggest birthday wish he got apparently was to not win the football game. Frustrating. Absolutely frustrating. The offense, that's an F. Absolute F performance. It's like that student that tries to come in at the last moment when it's near the end. They're on the border of passing the class. It's ending the quarter. In UCLA's case, I was more of a semester guy myself. But when it comes to quarter system, you're trying to get those last-minute classes done, pace is picking up. You're like, you've seen so much potential. Teacher, professor, whatever it may be. And then at the end of the year, it's like, there's a mediocre effort. You did really good on this hard test. Something I didn't expect you to do. And then all of a sudden, what should have been an easy test, you just flat out fail. You just flat out fail on something that it seemed like easy for most people that would have passed it. And they failed. So the student fails the class. That's how UCLA should treat the Chip Kelly job situation and how I'm treating UCLA's performance offensively that evening. Atrocious. F. Now, there's different things that could have changed. Reads, things that maybe they just didn't see and didn't execute. But you can't just miss execution that terribly in a game that got away from the Bruins in the fourth quarter, got away pretty much in the first half as soon as Garbers got hurt, and then you get stuffed on a 4th and short. As soon as I saw the tweets and social media blowing up, this feels like Arizona State, everybody's anxiety rose, and it played out exactly like the Arizona State game, except Cal had an offense and they weren't as banged up as Arizona State, so they pounded the Bruins. They just did after it was all said and done, despite late scores. Frustrating. Absolutely left by the offense. There's no other way. I'm the most optimistic person in the world. And you guys will probably see that when it comes to my pregame predictions, generally super optimistic. It just, at this point, just wears on the soul at the moment. Wears on the soul. Wrapping things up, we'll talk defense, special teams, and where D'Anton Lynn got snubbed in award consideration lists. Snubbed. Absolutely snubbed. Next on Locked On UCLA. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. It's getting cooler, even in Southern California, so go head out and hang with some FanDuel, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. It's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time than now to get in on the action, because, hey, you got to be winning something, right? If our Bruins are doing a little bad, you got to enjoy some FanDuel. App's super easy to use, wide range of betting options available. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Final segment for Locked On UCLA today. We're going to finish our grades of the atrocious UCLA-Cal game to end the 2023 regular season. And hey, what is the biggest snub? Well, the defense did not play as terribly as the final score indicated. They clearly were not interested in the final 5 minutes of that football game, being out there, watching Cal just run for 5 yards a pop. Expected, still a little disheartening to watch them just give up. Most of the players just give up on the field. It was just a frustrating way to end it. Still, the overall performance wasn't terrible, which is why you see D'Anton Lynn's snub on the finalist award for the Broyles Award, the nation's top assistant in college football. D'Anton Lynn didn't make the 5-man finalist list. It's Georgia's offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo, Iowa's defensive coordinator, Phil Parker, LSU's offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock. You have Michigan offensive coordinator, Sharon Moore, and then Oregon offensive coordinator, Will Stein. In terms of guys who truly changed what the team looked like from one year to the next, with somewhat of a similar roster construction, I'm not sure how D'Anton Lynn doesn't make that list. Okay, Will Stein. You're replacing Kenny Dillingham, who's now a head coach over at Arizona State? What really changed? You had Bo Nix back, all right? Now, if he was the coach of a Dante Moore-led Oregon team and did some fantastic things, now that's something. I don't see how he makes that list over D'Anton Lynn, who made this defense ferocious and had to deal with the offense coughing up points half the time. Michigan's offensive coordinator, Sharon Moore. I mean, that's a pretty simple choice there. I'm just going to say, one, if you coach 4 games as an acting head coach, I think you should be disqualified. Hot take. Hot take. Of course, he deserves to be on that list and will get a job very soon, probably as a real head coach. LSU's offensive coordinator, all right, yeah, whatever. You got Jaden Daniels, cool. Iowa's defensive coordinator deserves the biggest pay raise in the universe. And then you've got Georgia offensive coordinator. Why does Georgia's offensive coordinator have to be there? Why? UCLA's D coordinator should definitely be there over Will Stein, in my opinion, and or Georgia's offensive coordinator. How Lynn's not there? Would he have all those bonuses in his thing? He's going to hit some of those? Bro, that's just ridiculous. He will be one of the most talked about assistants to get hired elsewhere, possibly cross town, because of the way the defense performed, just to keep the Bruins afloat to be 7-5 this year. Because if he wasn't there, good Lord, who knows what this record would have been? Who knows how the defense would have played? Of course, they had all the talent there at the D-line. They had some spectacular, fun moments, returning fumbles for touchdowns against SC, everything that was fun, right? You had Latu with the pick. He was doing everything in that game. Everything. Should easily be the defensive player of the year in the Pac-12. Very biased opinion there. I would hope you agree with me. And he's not on the finalist award list, D'Anton Lynn, for the nation's top assistant? Come on. A little ridiculous. Little bit ridiculous. A little bit. Overall, in the game against Cal, UCLA allowed 124 rushing yards on 32 carries, just a little under 4 yards a pop. Jaden Ott, 80 yards, a little under 4 yards a carry. Williams Thomas, 10 yards, 10 carries, 4.7 yards a carry on 47 yards. It was a frustrating performance because the Bruins would make plays in this game. It'd be a pick, and then it'd be a turnover, then a pick to get the Bruins back in it again. Finally a score, only for the special teams to give up a touchdown. And all the guys defensively just sitting there on the sideline like, what can we do? We forced 2 turnovers. In this game, UCLA had 6 tackles for loss, only 1 sack from Grayson Murphy. Gabriel Murphy had 2. Lazio had a quiet game by his standards of sacks and everything in between. So the Bruins did what they needed to do defensively, making some plays. I know that you don't want to allow 124 rushing yards, but that's not an absurd total. 124 yards is not a crazy total. And how many of those were gained in the fourth quarter when they give it up, right? The defense's effort, as disheartening as it was at the end, just to see how frustrating everybody was and how frustrated it all was, they did what they needed to do to get stops. And how many times did it come from short fields in the second quarter or a special teams touchdown? UCLA's defense did not allow a touchdown until the fourth quarter. In a game where they're fighting, they're scrapping and clawing, where it's like, all right, we have hope. We have hope for this team to maybe get back in it. No, it was just utterly brutal. When you fumble the kickoff and then Cal scores a touchdown. So how many actual long drives did they go to score a touchdown in this game? Basically none. None that marched down and scored a touchdown in this game, which is why it's so frustrating to see how the Bruins lost it. In a game when you lose 33-7, it's not often when you give the student in a group project that was an F all around, a B, just because of their effort. But even they gave up at the end, right? We all don't like group projects. We all, depending on what you know, especially from school, frustrating. Just absolutely disheartening to see how the Bruins finished this game, finished the 2023 season. They forced Fernando Mendoza into 2 picks, everything they could do, yet the Bruins fell a bit short. I'm going to go with a C. I don't know, man. C plus, B minus. C plus is just a brutal grade for what they tried to do to keep the team in this game. And I'm going to go with it because nobody from this game should earn a B performance, but they played their hearts out. They deserve a much better grade. But it's like that disappointed teacher that knows, I'm just not going to bump up your grade. It's just not going to happen. C plus, absolutely passable effort. Certainly deserve a B. I'm just mad and bitter that they did a decent amount. They allowed Cal to run for more rushing yards. You go back to keys to the game. They, 1, allowed them to run the football better than the offense did. And 2, they I don't know what the defense can do about it. They turned it over. They forced less turnovers than Cal's defense did. I guess that's not something you can really change there. So a C plus performance for UCLA defensively. Emphasis on the C plus. Should be a B. I'm just bitter. Should be a B minus if we're being honest, but that's just the case. All right. Now you got special teams. Special teams. UCLA has had trouble all year long with special teams. Didn't matter who was the kicker. Returning kickoffs was just an absolute problem this year. Colson Yankoff fumbling in the fourth quarter seemed like the perfect full circle moment for how it just failed. And I don't want to go berate him as a football player, but sometimes you just got to put players in a position to succeed. And again, what's the definition of insanity? Trying the same thing over and over again and not succeeding. Why not change things when it comes to a kickoff return, right? Like, why have him repeatedly back there? I know he does a lot of things. He's very athletic, but clearly it just did not work this year with other schemes. As Chip Kelly said, it's up to the blocking. At some point, you've got to be able to do something different. Whether recruit a new kicker, find a new kickoff returner, you've got to have someone more dynamic on the roster, whether it be a walk-on in one aspect, whether it be more dynamic. Keegan Jones, who's now in the portal, could have, who knows, even though he did get a kickoff return and returned it 19 yards. I know Yankoff did return a kickoff 26 yards, but hey, in a game where your special teams kickoff coverage team allowed a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown right after you led it for 13 seconds, It's going to look a little ugly on the other side when you look at the UCLA return numbers in the special teams department. Special teams, if there's a grade worse than an F possible, I would give that to them. Overall, you miss field goals. You can't do anything in the return game. And you allow a return touchdown. Every single facet, basically, of special teams pretty much failed. Pretty much failed in this game for UCLA, forcing them to go for it on fourth down. How many times this season do you think Chip Kelly, yes, gambler, wants to go for it on fourth down? How many times could he not settle for a field goal because they just did not have trustworthy field goal kicking? I know there's nerves and everything gets there, and it can be a mental thing too. You win it in practice. It's another thing in a game. And it's just frustrating. There's words, many words you can use. It's just absolutely disgusting to see how this season ended up when it could have been a lot better. It's one thing for them to meet projections prior to the season. It's just sad to see that they could have done much more with what they had, being ranked as high as, 19, and then settling for a 7-5, losing Pac-12 conference record to end their Pac-12 tenure. Frustrating. F for the offense, F- for special teams, C+ for defense, and that was just utterly despicable. And Chip Kelly's still the coach. Danton Lynn doesn't get into the finalists for the Broyles Award, which he'll probably just be handed to Sharon Moore. That's just what's going to be. And then you've got UCLA losing two guys, Keegan Jones and Cam Brown, grad transfers in the portal. It's only the beginning. It's only the beginning. Transfer portal is going to start in a week. The early transfer portal window. So that's when everything's going to get crazy. Coaching changes. Nothing at this moment. UCLA basketball, the Maui Invitational. We're going to talk about how that's a springboard in the next episode. And we'll talk about UCLA women's UConn dub, first ever in program history. Promise. That's all coming in the next episode of Locked On UCLA. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. I know we're frustrated. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.